Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Y'all can do a little better than that. We're celebrating Doc. How's everybody doing tonight? That's right. We're gonna play a couple tunes for you guys.
Yeah, don't give me a microphone. I'm telling you, I love it. What does Doc say? Play life, got to talk life, too. Last time I worked with Doc, you know, he had some of these Indian attires at my house, too. Joanna and I would take him in. African and Ebony would take him in. Wherever he went in this country, he had a place to lay his head and somebody to cook him beans. Can I say yeah? Oh, he loved those beans. But don't put no pig meat in there. He didn't eat pig meat at all. But anyhow, he would keep some Indian attire, and he ran out of places. He had so many gigs, and this one final gig came up, and he said, I need something to wear. So he wore this, so I had to wear it tonight. Got his DNA in him. Yeah, that's Doc. What a wonderful, wonderful human being, like my brother. And, you know, I want to thank Zoe Mathiasen for making this card. You know, Lonnie was famous for his phrases. And I'm sure everybody here can relate to it and maybe add a few more that they didn't see written there, but they had heard. First time I met him was in Newark, New Jersey. And where's that money you owe me? Shit, do I owe this dude some money? Because he got you that way. But he would say the funniest things. I told Zoe to add, I don't give a Nash, you son of a Buick. No. Kiss my Nash, you son of a Buick. I don't give a Chevy. He didn't cuss. He did not cuss. You never heard a bad word out of Lonnie Smith, but he would say some funny things. He'd say, thought my nose was running, but it's not. He would say things that crack you up, and that's what made him so mad. On stage and off stage, there's nobody like Dr. Lonnie Smith. And as I said, I can say it again, he lived all over the place. Somebody was saying he was in Detroit, up above Keyboard Lounge there for years and years and years. He had a place to stay. Wherever he went, there was somebody to take care of him because he was loved, because he loved. You know, he loved everybody, and it came back to him. There's just, I could spend the rest of the night talking about it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to give it up to you, Jonathan. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you, Zoe, for making this card. And thank you, Frankie, and thank you, Holly, Case. Thank you all for being his angels, because we all are.
Well, you know, there's one thing that I can think about Doc off the cuff. I found it, there was one time I was at a photo session with him, and he didn't want to smile for any photos. And I thought, Doc, you have such a great smile. Everybody just loves your smile. It lights up a room. And I just found it interesting that he didn't want to smile in a photo session. But the best photos of him, I think, are him smiling, you know? And the spirit that he conveyed in that smile was just so deep. And I guess that's really what I want to say, because I think about that smile a lot. And thank you.
Just like to say, like, having Lonnie's embrace in my early 20s was a springboard that is still springing for me. And he was living in Detroit at the time, 1974. And I was in Cleveland. It was before I came to New York. And to live. But the first time I came to play here was with Dr. Lonnie Smith. We drove from Detroit and recorded my first session, and it was called Aphrodisia on the Groove Merchant label at the time. And we did a series of recordings during that period. And it was really something else to come here and play and explore the music. Having his embrace about that taught me everything, because he was one of the most expressive, dynamic improvisers and a natural, creative spirit. Yeah. I treasure my relationship with Lonnie Smith.
You know, I met Doc in September of 2013. Is at the standing in line with my two sons, Henry and Solomon, at the Black Bear Diner in Monterey, just down the road from the fairgrounds. And I'd never met Doc before. I'd gone to see him play. Used to see him play at the Watch Club Mozambique in Detroit in the 70s. And Joe played with him. And Holly introduced us, and he said something. He said something like, "This is all your fault. I'm sick of you." And then he gave me a big hug, you know. And we discovered we'd like to have eggs every morning. It was so we immediately bonded over eggs. And I bumped into him about 8 months later. Same thing, waiting in line. Same thing. He was right in front of us in the line at the. We were checking into a hotel at the for the Kennedy Center 75th anniversary gala for Blue Note Records. We played with Lou Donaldson, and same thing, you know. He said, "This is all your fault. I'm sick of you." And then we started talking, and before we got the room keys, we'd shaken hands on a deal to sign him to Blue Note Records again after a 40-year hiatus. Right? And Blue Note just seemed like a great home for him. It was, the groove was always a very important part of the legacy there, you know, going back to Alfred Lyon doing his dance in the control room. And Lonnie fit the groove continuum right in the center between Albert Ammons and the present day, hopefully. And the thing is, though, there's so much more to Lonnie than just the groove. You know, we talked tonight about, someone mentioned about what a great melodicist he was. He was one of the best bass players I ever heard in my life, you know. And I couldn't believe he did it with his foot and a little bit of left hand, you know. He had a brilliant knowledge of harmonics, and his chords were incredible. He was a very generous musician to solo in front of, because he just elevated every great accompanist. He elevated everyone's solos, and he gave you just this beautiful palette of colors to play off of. It was a treat to play with Doc, and he was a consummate musician. Great, innovative, unique voice. All you could ever ask for out of a musician. But more than that, he was a beautiful, sweet guy. Beneath the turban and the bravado and all the stuff, man, he was just a really sweet cat and a really good, loyal friend. And so I know I speak for everyone in the room, man. We miss him a lot, and he was one of a kind. And it was an honor to get to make records with him and to be his friend. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I'm one of those guys who doesn't talk much, but you all know me, so you know that's not true. But I will keep this short. I'm just going to say, you know, there's one thing. We were doing an interview, and we're really hoping that this documentary about Doc comes out, the Doc. And I got a little broken up at one point, and it wasn't a moment that you would imagine one would get broken up. I wasn't talking about, you know, the 3 a.m. drives from the gig to the airport where we were all watching, you know, Ali G and laughing, you know, or having eggs at many different diners and watching him schmooze and romance the hostess, you know. Or one of our lovely sound checks that people saw where we bickered like a married couple. Those ones aren't on the documentary. But you know, none of that got me broke up until we talked about my sound his sound, I'm sorry. When suddenly it hit me, I just thought about being on the stage and feeling like a warm embrace from a grandfather or an uncle. Be a kind of a weird uncle, right? But you know, but that feeling that I would get when like Don was just mentioning, you'd hit a note and suddenly there'd be this hug that would come around, and he knew exactly what note you were hitting, and he knew exactly what he was doing and how that was going to make you feel and what it was going to bring out of you. Sometimes it wasn't what you expected. That was the weird uncle part, but. But it was always exciting, and it was always so beautiful that as I mentioned his sound and the feeling that I got and how I was missing that's what I missed. Was I love him, of course, and everything about Doc as a person was such a deep connection. I never had a connection with anyone in my musical life or personal life like I had with Doc. But that feeling, hitting that note and feeling that organ, you know, the way he would hit the B3 right next to you and just kind of that sound, and I just lost it. I started crying. It was like Sally Jesse Raphael, but worse. But I'm just going to say that was the beautiful thing, and I think Doc would love that. I think he would love all these mannerisms and all these beautiful stories, but he would love that when we think about his sound and that warmth and that big sound, that big, beautiful kind of loving, open, anything can happen feeling you had every time you played with him. He'd be happy if he knew that was the thing that screwed you up. So here's to you, Doc. We love you. We're going to miss you forever. Until we see you again, right?
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about one of my closest friends. We were friends for 45 years. And I'll never forget the first time I met him. He was playing with Lou Donaldson in Newark, New Jersey at the Cadillac Club, and he was looking for a guitar player. So I went over, and the first thing he says to me, "You got that money you owe me." And here I am in the club, got the money you owe me. So we got together, and we played a little bit. Nothing happened. He called me up about a year later, and he goes, "Remember those 2 songs of yours that you had? I'm in the studio recording an album." He said, "I'd like to do those songs." He says, "Can I come up and run them down with you and check it out?" So we went in the studio, and we recorded 2 of my tunes. One of them was called "It's Changed," and the other one was called "When the Night Is Right." And both of them became a pretty big hit. They were on BLS and all the radio stations. But from that time on, from 1977, I played with him continually all the way up through the 80s, when Lonnie was really in his downtime. And we had a lot of fun together. We definitely had a lot of fun. Although he was not doing well financially, but he was always in good spirits. He was always at my house hanging out. And my son was like his second son. Like his second son. And there's one little thing that's not on the paper. I used to have a van, so I'd pick Lonnie up, and we'd drive out of town and go to a gig. And we recorded a lot of these. In fact, I have about 350 tapes at home of live recordings of Lonnie with me and Smitty and different people. And we'd put the tape on, and the second I put the tape on the van, he'd fall asleep. But the second I hit the George Washington Bridge, he'd wake up and go, "Amazing." So whenever I called him on the phone, he would see it was my number. The first thing he'd say, "Amazing." That's one of his special things. He will always be remembered. He's like the closest thing to me, and we had a great musical rapport and a great friendship. And he'll be missed. I'm sure everybody else here will miss him as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I had the privilege of working with Doc for, I guess, about almost 15 years. And, it was a lot of crazy stories on the road. And one in particular, I don't know if you remember this, Jonathan Kreisberg, but I think we were in Nebraska, and we were traveling from Nebraska to I don't know where we were going. But the same type of thing like Richie was saying, we were listening to one of the tapes, or he was actually listening to it in the headphones, and he starts just cracking up. And I'm like, what's happening? What's happening? So he used to tape all the gigs on his phone. And so he's listening to whatever we played, and he's cracking up. So then he stops. And I said, man, what's so funny? What's so funny? And he lets us all listen to it. And he's cracking up. It's doing a drum solo. I was like, man, what did I do wrong? Is there something so funny? He had gotten up and gone to the bathroom.
You got to tell it the right way.
All right, come on. Let's do it.
I'm going to help him out on this
Come on,
because this
do
is
it,
too
do it.
good. So he says, and it wasn't Nebraska, it was Europe.
No,
Yeah.
It was Nebraska.
Was Nebraska?
Remember that? Yeah, it was Nebraska. I
Oh yeah,
remember
you're
that.
right. You're right.
See?
Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. All right. So you hear John's solo start, and we're listening. Lonnie, that's another thing. He was, he'd seem casual, but he cared. He loved the music, and he wanted to know what was happening every night. So we listen to it, and he starts cracking up. We said, "What's going on?" And he says, "Put this on." And you're listening, and everything's going along. The sound quality was surprisingly good.
Right.
Suddenly, the drum solo comes, and you hear.
Starts fading away.
Starts fading. Goes away. You say, "Well, what's going on?" And we didn't actually remember that this had happened because it was like 2 gigs later, right, or something like that. Say, what's going on? The drums just kind of disappeared, and then suddenly you hear like kind of, and then you hear zip. Some kind of trickling sound.
It's like 3 drops.
Just a few drops. And then you suddenly start hearing like the drum solo's back. And boom, the organ comes in. And we all realize what happened. That was when, Lonnie says, when you get to this age, guys, it's coming for you. When you gotta go, you gotta go. And we forgot he got up in the middle of John's solo. And walked out. So yeah.
That shit was hilarious.
But the beginning of his solo and the ending of his solo was incredible.
Don't worry about the stuff in the middle, right? Yeah, but that was just one of the many. But for me personally, I thought he always felt this close bond with him, and then later on I found out that he always reminded me of my father. Very even keel, very mild manner, and that's how my father was. And I figured out what happened was they actually shared the same birthday, July 3rd, and so I was like, man. That seems wild. And then I always felt close to him. And then my birthday is July 1st, so we always kind of celebrated our birthdays together at the Standard. And, he just reminded me of my father. And he was always kind of like that for me, like an uncle, even, after, he got sick. Myself and another great drummer, Joe Dyson, went down to see him and spend time with him. And, no matter what he was going through, he always kept that smile and that positive energy and positive attitude. So that's how I remember him. That's how I will continue to remember him, So, again, God bless you, Doc. Thank you for entering my life and making it better. Thank you. Seth, come on up and say something.
Hello. So I've had the good fortune of knowing Doc from when I was pretty young. In my 20s, as an agent, I started working with Doc when he was with Lou Donaldson, and we were booking Lou Donaldson, and then started booking Doc as a leader himself on tours. And I really feel very privileged that I had the opportunity to do that at such a young age and learn from such a master in the music, along with some other musicians here tonight, like Joe Lovano and a number of others. So, but there's one story, one anecdote I'd like to share with you that is so Doc, which is I was presenting, doing a concert series, producing a concert series in the city here in Madison Square Park for the New York City Parks Department. And there was this one concert we did with Doc, when he was headlining it. And this was a free show to the public in the beautiful park there, and it was crowded, it was packed, and as it goes with renting organs in New York or anywhere else for that matter, you never know what you're going to get. And we got this organ, and at the sound check, realized there was a problem with the bass pedals, because of course the doctor used, as the master he was used the foot pedals. So we figured out, worked it out, and fixed some of the contacts on before the show started. Then the show, eventually, so the show got underway, and during the first song, somewhere later in the first song, all of a sudden Doc gets up from the organ. He's down on the ground, checking out the bass pedals, and I'm thinking oh shit, the pedals are screwed up. We gotta figure this out. What am I gonna do? We can't get another bass pedal. The show's just starting. And he's looking all around. So I run up on stage. I get down on the ground, and the sound person is also coming up on the stage now. And we're all getting down on the ground, and I'm like, Doc, what's up? What's going on? He's like, is it the bass pedals? Is it bass pedals? And I'm sweating. I'm really concerned about this. Show's gonna all fall apart. This master is here, and he's got this screwed up organ with the bass pedals. He's like, no, I lost my tooth. He was on the ground. His tooth had fallen out. He was on the ground looking for his tooth. And then he got so excited. He picked it up. He found it. He's like, yeah, I got it. Put it back in without losing a beat. He got back up on the organ and played the hell out of the rest of the show. And nobody in the audience knew what was going on. So to this day, I've never forgotten that special moment I shared with him, which was so just, it was so humanizing in a way, right? It was just, and that's the thing about Doc. He was just such a gentle giant in the music, and he was music all the time. He was music on and off the bandstand in terms of his persona. And one thing that I really learned from him and that I strive for is, of all the people that I've known in my life, he's the one who mastered living in the moment. His every moment, he was only just in the moment, and that's what was the beautiful also on the bandstand, and how he shared the music with the other musicians. He had everyone's back, like Jonathan talked about, and all the other musicians know, because he just lived in the moment, which is what all musicians, and we all strive to do, which gets harder and harder these days, but that is the gift that he keeps giving, I think. So I just wanted to share that. And I want to thank Holly for making this happen. And it's been really a great honor. A great honor to work with you on this, to work with Jonathan Blake on it, and to work with Don Was on it. Really feel privileged to do so, and to be continued.
Walking down the road with a good friend of mine to a better place, a better time, where a world of peace, sweet love, and harmony, right around the bend, is what we'll find.
I've seen so much in my lifetime. You got to really mean it. If you don't mean it, it feels good. It feels good to me when I even say it, you know?